If, in fact, this is halted here, the mayor of New London, Michael Passero, says the Grinch has just stolen Christmas. Is he right?
Not a heck of a Christmas present, was it? Look, you just heard the president say he doesn't like wind power, but he's not going to interrupt things that were permitted a long time ago. Our wind, Revolution Wind, was actually permitted under Trump 1 back in 2018-19, so a long time ago. So this was a real shock to our system. They did it to us over Labor Day as well. Remember, they had a stop work order. No warning at all. This time they've pulled the permits. And we've got to fight like heck to come back, because you're never going to bring down the price of electricity in New England unless we get more generation, and that's what wind power does.
Governor, in September, your state successfully won its bid in courts to lift the moratorium that the Trump administration put in when it first took office on wind power. Now the administration is going at it again and raising national security concerns. Some analysts are looking at that and saying this could be a more durable way to essentially do the same thing. What's your take, and do you think those national security concerns are legitimate?
No. I think the president said, I don't like wind power. Come up with another way that you can shut it down. And it was only very recently they came up with these national security concerns. I talked to the Secretary of Interior, Doug Burgum. I've known him for many years. I said, I'm not sure this is for real, but if you want to, we'll come down, we'll talk to you about it. We'll bring down the folks building the wind power, the engineers. But don't stop us in mid-construction for the second time in 3 months. You're just blowing a hole in our efforts to bring down the price of electricity in New England.
You know, we understand that this project is about 85% complete. It would power some 350,000 homes across Connecticut and Rhode Island. What will happen to electricity bills without the wind farm?
More likely to spike. We can't put pipes in the ground to get natural gas and oil. We're just not that type of a state. We don't have that capacity. It's very rare that we can create our own generation. Offshore wind is one way we can do that. And the more generation we have, the less spiking energy during very cold periods. And that means we can save money for electric ratepayers.
We want to welcome our viewers joining us from the TV side, Bloomberg TV colleagues. And we are here with Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont talking, of course, about this new announcement out of the Department of Energy today, putting a halt on those 5 major wind farm projects, including the one that's being assembled in your state. Governor, I'm curious how this is going to play with constituents not only in your state, but across the country, as energy prices are expensive, it's cold, and they're looking to spike. You know, the energy crisis is something that's constantly talked about. This is also an administration that is trying to remove barriers to other forms of energy, including nuclear. The president has said he wants to restart coal. So why not add wind energy to that? Why is this specific mechanism of generating power in his crosshairs?
It is contradictory. I've talked to the president about this. He cares very strongly about bringing down the price of electricity, especially in New England, where we don't have a lot of our own generation and it gets expensive. I said, we'll work with you on a nuclear power, we'll work with you on natural gas and other sources, but don't pull the plug on a plant that's already 85% complete, ready to turn on in just a few months. That makes no sense at all. I thought we had agreement they weren't going to do that. Then we were shocked.
All right. Well, I want to get back to the justification from the administration here, Governor, and I know you commented on this briefly, but I'd like to hear more about the national security concerns or lack thereof, knowing that the Interior Department says these turbines may interfere with radar systems. We understand, however, according to the Attorney General William Tong, the project's already gone through federal review. He says fully vetted, permitted, state, federal, up and down, inside out, every which way you can. Is that correct?
William's absolutely correct. And actually, it went through a very strong national security review over the last few years, voted on a bipartisan basis in Congress just a year and a half ago, where they said
is the administration just making this up?
Issues.
Is the administration just making this up then?
I think so, but look, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. Get us down there. We'll bring the very best engineers from Ørsted, who's the developer. We'll talk it through. But there's no excuse for shutting this down in mid-stride, not in the ninth inning of the ball game. Look, they're seeing drones has changed the world dramatically. They want to take a second look at, onshore radar. It didn't change the world in the last, 12 months.
Also, this is not, to a point you made earlier, this is not a new technology. These wind turbines have existed in Europe, much to the president's chagrin, for quite a few years now. We haven't previously heard of it having big impacts on NATO or Europe's military readiness in offshore areas there. We've also got some reporting from Bloomberg and analysts at Raymond James saying, I'm skeptical that there's any new information about the military concerns all of a sudden that single-handedly warrants these projects being halted. So do you think this is an aesthetic, not necessarily an economic or national security decision?
I mean, last time around it was birds and whales. This time around it's radar. I don't know what it's going to be next time. I got to tell you, I come out of the business world. I thought the Trump administration had a lot of business folks and it was going to be a pro-business administration. But this herky-jerky, on again, off again. First they did it in tariffs, then they did it in SNAP. Now they're doing wind power. Makes it very difficult to do business with this administration. Very difficult.
Well, I'd like to hear more about that just from your view in Connecticut. You mentioned SNAP. We can add Obamacare subsidies that are about to expire, sending people's bills higher. How much are you and other governors working to fill affordability gaps that are being created by the administration?
I can tell you here in Connecticut, we've set aside, $500 million just to at least protect the most vulnerable. But the idea that you were going to yank food support from working families when food prices have almost doubled in the last 5 years made no sense. And then as Judith pointed out, when it comes to the healthcare subsidies on the exchange, people are going to see their bills go up $1,000 or $2,000. That's a heck of a Christmas present, and that's a real shock to the system. So we made sure that we protected all of our families up to about $128,000. Then we softened the blow for everybody else.
Governor, you said you've been talking to the Trump administration throughout this process and about this decision, how they were treating it previously. I'm wondering, did you get any kind of a heads up? Have you spoken to the president since this decision came down? And if not, what do you want to tell him?
No, this really came out of left field at the very last moment. We had a conference call, all the governors with Secretaries Burgum and Wright just a couple of weeks ago, talking about pipelines and natural gas. This did not come up at all. Like I said, I think this was a problem, a solution looking for a problem, and it's the wrong solution.
Just lastly then, Governor, what would you tell people driving to work today in Putnam, Connecticut, who are already looking at expensive electric bills? They're worried about the data center that might be coming in next door. Do they need to brace for higher prices? And what will they look like in 2026?
Well, we're seeing a pause on data centers just because they suck so much electricity and drive up costs. But one of the things we need is more generation. I think those ratepayers in Putnam know all too well that we're doing everything we can to add more electricity generation, to bring down costs for you and your family. And pulling the plug on Revolution Wind in the ninth inning makes no sense at all.
Well, this is something that we're going to keep talking about here. It sounds like you might not have a sense or be able to quantify how much those bills are going to rise, Governor. Is that fair to say?
I can tell you that it's going to go up, and it could go up dramatically during very cold times when wind power is generating the most, and we're going to have a spike in energy demand. That's what I'm trying to protect you from.